Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking something that is incredibly painful, but honestly nearly universal. Suddenly losing interest in a relationship. If you've been on either side of this, maybe you watched a partner just pull away for what felt like no reason at all, or maybe you were the one who woke up one day feeling completely disconnected, then you already know the heavy guilt and confusion that comes with the territory. But as we're going to dig into the research today, we're finding out that this loss of feelings, it is almost never sudden. Let's look beneath the surface. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the myth of sudden loss, ADHD and chasing dopamine, the psychology of the ick, overattachment and emotional exhaustion, the quiet fading of love, and finally, rewiring your relationships. All right, starting off with section 1, the myth of sudden loss. We are shifting the paradigm on fading feelings. It's a deeply painful question, right? Why do feelings just disappear? When you're on the receiving end, it literally feels like the rug was just yanked out from under you. Society kind of conditions us to expect these big cinematic endings. A massive blowout fight, a huge betrayal, some dramatic goodbye in the rain. But the reality, it is far quieter. Love rarely just vanishes without this long internal preamble. It fades through repeated moments of ignored needs, unsaid apologies, and the conversations that simply never happen. Carl Jung actually hit the nail on the head with this. Where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, there love is lacking. This perfectly captures the idea that connection fails the second love turns into a struggle for emotional survival. When a relationship devolves into you practically begging for basic effort, begging for communication, or just constantly fighting for control, your nervous system stops associating that person with peace. It flags them as stress. And, brilliantly, your mind starts to protect you by just pulling away. And this dynamic creates a massive disconnect between what we see on the outside and what's actually happening on the inside. Think of it like a giant iceberg. The surface behavior often looks like this sudden, villainous betrayal, and we ask ourselves, no way, how could they change so fast? But the subconscious root is actually a deeply complex, quiet mechanism. It might be a neurological drop in dopamine, an avoidant attachment trigger, or just profound emotional exhaustion. So what looks like a completely sudden shift is actually a slow, highly protective internal response. Moving on to section 2, ADHD and chasing dopamine, the neurological fear of losing interest. So for someone with an ADHD brain, walking away often isn't about the other person at all. Actually, scratch that, it's rarely about the other person. It is about a profound neurological craving. Because ADHD brains naturally sit at lower baseline dopamine levels, they are constantly seeking novelty. They are literally wired to be forever curious. When a connection is fresh, just learning about this shiny new person delivers an absolutely incredible, natural dopamine high without any real barrier to entry. You can actually see this play out in a very specific, predictable timeline. First, you're seeking the shiny new thing. That kicks off phase 2, extreme hyperfocus, where you're eating, sleeping, and breathing this new person or new hobby. But eventually, you hit the dopamine threshold. The relationship starts requiring difficult, everyday maintenance, or the sheer novelty just wears off. Bam, the sudden drop. This right here explains the intense, crushing shame a lot of ADHD individuals feel when a relationship abruptly morphs into a draining chore. They aren't flaky, they aren't broken, their brain is literally just starving for the dopamine it used to get for free. Next up, section 3, the psychology of the ick, when attraction suddenly turns off. Okay, so we've all heard the viral internet buzzword, the ick. It is that sudden onset of extreme disgust or repulsion towards someone you genuinely liked, acting as a subconscious deterrent to intimacy. It feels incredibly visceral, like opening the fridge and getting a huge whiff of spoiled milk. You get a totally genuine physical reaction of disgust. But psychologically speaking, it is actually an avoidant attachment response that gets triggered the second things get just a little too close for comfort. It is absolutely wild to look at the contrast here. On the surface, you are suddenly inexplicably repulsed because, I don't know, they chewed a potato chip too loudly or they wore the wrong shoes. And yeah, it feels absurd in the moment, but the root cause is profound. It's a deep-seated fear of vulnerability. Basically, you experienced an influx of intimacy, your brain registered it as immediate danger, and it flipped the disgust switch so you would run away fast before you could be abandoned. When we pull back and look at the hidden triggers, we start to see that the ick is usually just unresolved resentment or fear, totally masquerading as sudden disgust. This is especially true with the accumulation of paper cuts. Avoidant individuals have a tendency to sweep minor annoyances under the rug just to keep the peace. But you know what? Those tiny cuts fester. Eventually, one completely innocent action triggers the entire backlog of unaddressed resentment, and boom, a sudden, overwhelming loss of feelings. Section 4. Overattachment and emotional exhaustion, when connection turns into survival. Now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, we have overattachment. This usually stems from childhoods where love had to be constantly earned. If you grew up in a home where affection was incredibly inconsistent, maybe warm one minute and totally withdrawn the next, you essentially trained your nervous system to link love with intense, exhausting anxiety. You literally learned to walk on eggshells. So, as an adult, your sense of emotional safety relies entirely on analyzing your partner's mood, their tone of voice, or their attention, just to feel like you are enough. The absolutely devastating irony of emotional dependence is how it destroys the relationship from the inside out. In a healthy dynamic, the vibe is, hey, I love you, I care for you, but I still know who I am. But in emotional dependence, you completely shrink yourself. You are pouring from an entirely empty cup just to avoid any hint of tension. And ultimately, the overgiving partner loses interest because they completely shut down. They are running on fumes and literally have nothing left to give. Which brings us to Section 5, the quiet fading of love, the anatomy of a fade. So there is this silent withdrawal that happens in the quiet shadows of everyday life. And tracing this timeline captures perfectly how a human heart gets tired through repeated, unspoken disappointments. Over weeks, you stop feeling emotionally safe. Over months, your brain starts adapting by lowering expectations. You just stop expecting any real change. Fast forward to years, you stop even trying to explain your feelings because, let's face it, it feels like talking to a brick wall. And finally, the end. You simply stop reaching for closeness altogether. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that the person didn't stop loving first. They actually stopped hoping first. They were driven away by emotional exhaustion from a completely one-sided effort, and most importantly, a profound lack of emotional repair. When we fail to repair the little hurts along the way, the disappointment rewires our expectations until eventually protecting your own inner peace just becomes way more important than maintaining the connection. This is such a powerful reminder for all of us. Every single relationship has conflict. People hurt each other. They misunderstand each other. But the relationships that actually go the distance, they aren't the magical ones without conflict. They are the ones that actively, consistently repair the damage afterward. Love rarely survives on feelings alone. It requires daily, present effort and the conscious decision to keep choosing connection. Section 6. Rewiring your relationships. The pathway back to health. Okay, so how do we fix this? Whether you're an ADHD individual seeking a quick dopamine hit, an avoidant partner dealing with the sudden physical repulsion of the ick, or someone healing from overattachment and burnout, awareness is your superpower. By noticing the subconscious patterns you're repeating, you literally activate your prefrontal cortex, the logic center of your brain. This gives you the space to hit pause, step out of your protective nervous system, and actively choose to communicate and repair rather than just bolting for the door. As we wrap things up today, I want you to ask yourself a deeply critical question the next time you feel your interest starting to fade. Are you resting to protect your peace from a genuinely draining environment, or are you just hiding out of a deep-seated fear of vulnerability? Being honest about the answer to that question will absolutely tell you if your loss of interest is genuine growth or if it's just an old trauma response keeping you stuck in a loop. It has been so incredible unpacking the depths of this iceberg with you today. By understanding the subconscious roots, the neurology, and the deep psychology behind our fading feelings, my hope is that this empowers you to look at your own connections with a bit more empathy, a ton of self-compassion, and a lot more awareness. Because remember, the ultimate goal isn't to just lose interest in people forever. The goal is to finally find the ones who feel like peace, not pressure. I want to leave you with one final thought. Looking back at your own life, which of your past relationships could be explained by what lies beneath the iceberg? Was it a massive craving for dopamine, the avoidant Ike, or was it just pure, unfiltered emotional exhaustion? Taking the time to understand your own patterns is the first true step to finding the right people. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.